level 1.
Kind of poignant there to see the KT and T1 banners with DRX in the middle, given the roster that KT is currently fielding. Now, we have seen that on red side, some of our teams seemingly get struck by the curse that makes you unable to, execute on any of the drafts. The Yone, this is 100% earned by BDD. I think, as we pointed out, even in game number 1 that they did lose, he was the one stalwart defender for KT. Rumble going to remain on the ban list here, as he should be. The Jhin Ziggs trade is something that I'm looking towards now. The Smolder, unsurprisingly, comes through as well.
So if you're happy to take the Jhin into the Ziggs, obviously we saw the opportunity for that last game, but it didn't happen because they wanted to prioritize things like the Yone. But there's time for it now. The Yone's obviously gone, so maybe lower priority to get pigs for BDD. We'd expect the Jhin to come through in this rotation, or at least before the second phase of bans. But immediately, Leona coming out, and then Ivan. Interesting. Definitely different from the priorities we've typically seen from this team. Obviously, one in barrel to have that pick with confidence. We've seen the Poppy often picked into Leona, though. I wonder if T1 bring that out.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get more protection, you could look at the Poppy. They're hovering Xinjiao, which I don't think we're going to see. The Ivern has been a go-to for Pyosik all season long, ever since he returned to the Rift in the meta. Sejuani just going to be the pick, though, for Oner, which has been the go-to comfort pick for him.
And it is the blind Camille to come through here. Obviously, Sejuani and Camille as a duo, a lot of power there. And it basically forces KT to say, do we pick Jax here? Or is it going to get banned away? I feel like that's the one pick that isn't going to make it through to the next rotation. And with the Ivern and the Leona already locked in, I think you can go for it. Perfect. Considering it here. And Counter-Strike value into Sejuani is always going to feel amazing. And we have seen Camille really struggle in this matchup.
It feels like, though, this was kind of T1 setting a gambit. The Camille, even if you're not going to be able to have as much presence in the side lane into a Jax, you're still good in team fights setting up for the Ziggs ult. But on top of that, you basically guarantee that KT have to make a tough choice. Jax or Jhin, they go for the Jax, so T1 will likely just ban the Jhin out here and deny that away. That being said, on the other side, KT do deny that Poppy that we've seen have a good matchup into Leona during the regional gauntlet.
Yeah, it feels like the second phase of bans, the bans should be relatively straightforward. A lot still left on the table that could be utilized by either team. The Poppy, an obvious one. The Seraphine also getting a look at here. Has been another answer into the Ziggs as, that 80 carry, quote-unquote, just to, get some shielding, some healing to deal with the poke and also be an AP presence for the team.
Would imagine that the Jhin is next here on the ban list for T1. Otherwise, KT Rosa can just slam Jhin on R4 and then save the counter pick, give BDD again something that can really punish them in, because I do think BDD again has been extremely solid thus far in this series.
Interesting as well, there's no look at Tristana in this. Oh, okay.
That's Tristana. It does mean the Jhin is open.
Yeah.
But maybe we want to go in a different direction. We'll see. We have obviously seen the Jhin into the Ziggs like really often, really popular. There is still obviously the option of the MF available as well, which we've seen a decent amount, although into a Camille, Sejuani might be difficult ever really to channel that ult. The Corki comes in, 10 loss streak for this pick so far, but BDD decides he wants to try and break that. And then this side, looking at Talia, obviously something that with the Camille setup, great follow-up onto that.
This makes me think that they're looking towards maybe an AP carry for Deft here, like something a little bit crazy, even with the Seraphine ban and the Ziggs already picked up, because if you don't desperately need 80 damage, like Tristana obviously already got taken away. The Ivern combined with the Corkis is still solid. Corki is a very solid AD carry in the mid lane, as we've seen. Is that going to be enough? It looks like instead a Sivir. We saw Guma pull out as well. And this time it is going to be Deft trying to bring it in here.
It just once again
it's
feels
not like Jhin anymore.
It just once again feels like a low-value bot game. I think maybe the thought process was they expected KT to take MF or Jhin, and they're like, well, we can just bottle to block the ult. But KT don't take the bait. They go for the Sivir instead. Bottle, very low value against the Sivir who can spell shield it. And now you're in a situation where you have the dive threats of your composition, but bot doesn't really facilitate that so well. When you could have had something like a Rel, who you imagine the Rel diving in with his T1 composition, it feels a lot more on theme.
Really does. Also, the Taliyah we have not seen for a while. The only combo that we saw consistently is the Defy, because it's so easy and so guaranteed to get set up. A lot of the other setup is somewhat conditional, right? You need to either hit your ultimate. If you're the Sejuani, you need to get the Bard stun off or get off the ultimate and then actually land the timing on the stasis as well. We'll see if the blue side proves to be strong enough here. Thus far, obviously, have been able to get it done.
This guy says whenever he comes down, they win 100% of the time. 1 for 0.
Nice.
He didn't tell us the numbers, so it could be anything.
Technically, it's correct.
Yeah, 100%. Well, they definitely have a lot of setup. We'll see if it works for them in this game. Definitely wasn't the way it worked with the Bard in Game 2. Sivir comes out again as an answer into Ziggs. So we'll see if that works as well as we out of the rift for game number 3.
소환사의 협곡에 오신 것을 환영합니다.
All right. Well, both fan bases. Chronicler, you didn't want to say it before, but it does feel like desperation, you know, especially because both teams now have gotten a taste of how their team wins and in what manner, and they want more. They are greedy for that world spot. Understandably, they would like their team to go and participate in the Worlds Championship of 2024.
It's not just that, but it's the fact that this might be the last we see of either roster, right? We've been teasing about the last, final, real, actual, this time, actual last dance. But I feel like this time, it's really the last dance. And if
he's referenced it many times.
He has, yeah.
So
but I feel like that happened in 2022 as well, which is why there's so many memes around it. But obviously, I feel like we have now actually reached that point. I think that KT also had such a magnificent summer last year and then wasn't really able to make it work, had very unlucky draws, then met JDG and just kind of all went downhill from there. On the flip side, this T1 roster has been together, excluding Zeus, since 2021. And talk about Zeus did take a bit of a beating here early on.
Is Beryl going to try and solo kill Guma again? That's the question.
So Guma was looking around for him, and he's sneaky Leona's hanging out. There is a 8-game losing streak in the regional qualifier alone for the Corki. Faker has lost on it 3 times, Showmaker twice, Closer 3 times. BDD has not played it yet, so perhaps he will break the streak.
Yeah, we do see that TP coming down now from Deft. This is the sort of adaptation they're doing, the very light swap where they TP down so you can pick up this big wave. And Deft will end up really far ahead in terms of levels. Barrel going to soak up a little bit of experience here as well to get level 2, but presumably still hasn't been seen, so maybe Guma gets punished here.
Oh, okay. Nice little force flash from Keria. BDD already pretty low as the pressure was already on. We saw some slows into rocks being thrown into BDD at level 1. And just the follow-up on that coming out here.
We do see pings on barrels, so Guma is very aware that there's a Leona waiting in that rush.
You have to assume with Barrel. I mean, maybe you showed when we went looking bot lane, but you just have to assume with Barrel.
Yeah, Barrel's always in the brush. BDD, though, already being flashed down. One of the big things that I think is the reason why the Corki has been so high prio is because he has so much early agency. We have seen him really struggle, but his early laning phase often feels like a very strong part of his kit. I want to highlight, actually, that Oner was able to start on his own bot side and then immediately make his way into the top half of the jungle, which means that Pioshik right now actually in a really rough spot because he set up the top side and then Oner just walked in and took it, right? And Ivern in particular can have an insanely quick early clear, but he's really relying on the setup. So if he wastes a lot of time on setup, doesn't actually get to cash out in it. Not like he's going to be falling behind when it comes to the camps, but it does take away, I think, one of the biggest strengths of this jungler is what his early clear allows you to do on the map.
Yeah, I mean, he's just so vulnerable to counter jungling because you have to invest the time, wait, and then come back.
Hello.
Well, he somehow messed that up. I don't know.
Yeah, I think he didn't get the first auto off.
Yeah.
Queued.
Rough.
Even a 2-time world champion can fumble that, so, you know.
With a skin for this exact champion is Not a lot of mana here in Perfect. Does have a cookie.
Perfect's gonna go back in with the Ivern Q, and now taking a bunch of damage as the freeze will come down. The permafrost. But Pioshik's still making his presence felt. He's got double buff, and he's just kind of autoing him down, throwing in some Qs. And yeah, I mean, there is definitely potential setup, especially with all these brushes. Zeus and Oner, they're really desperate to push in that wave, and they will be successful.
Yeah, I think just Perfect's a bit too low, and there are too many minions, so you can go in with the counter-strike, but you ain't gonna like one-shot Zeus, Oner, and then the minions
still had flash as well.
Yeah, they would just mangle you, so I think trying to protect Perfect, trying to hold the wave as long as possible, but the right decision made there not to commit to something more.
How very unlike KT.
Yes, yes. Interestingly enough.
Suspicious.
We need Barrel just to send it in with an aggressive flash or something.
I'm sure he will. That's
It'll happen, yeah.
The lane's in such a rough spot here, but it will. We'll see if Faker actually holds it for longer. BDD just has teleport so he can get back, but it feels like we've constantly seen Keria just coming mid, trying to pot BDD in an uncomfortable position, and the matchup's already pretty fine for the Talia, but it's really been pushed in Faker's favor here with the extra help.
He's going to get 6 as well off of this final cannon.
Yeah.
So can now make his way back to base, get a buy-in, and can maybe even hold on to his teleport. We'll have to see what BDD or how fast he's going to be able to shove in this wave. As not quite enough for the tier and lost chapter. Does Faker have?
Yeah, it's a sad inventory for any AP player. Just desperate to try to get that item, but can't. Definitely going to feel much better for Faker in this game compared to the last game where he was playing Nasus and basically did nothing and fell behind. Now he's the one in the driver's seat with the help of Keria.
Those are the components where you really think about every CS you missed, and you're like, if I just hit that CS.
Yeah. Isn't it just like 180 on top of that to finish it? I forget what the combined cost.
I can't remember the exact amount, but it's not much at all.
Yeah. Well, they're trying to set up here for the grubs. And KT Rolster with the Ivern are utilizing that zone control very well. But in goes Barrel. He says, enough of the zone control. I'm just going to put my face in it. And he does do that, and he's probably dead as the knockup comes in. He gets a shield, though. Stays alive for a very long period of time, but eventually does go down. First blood goes to Faker. And all going to be thrown out here by Guma, who is level 6. As T1 will look to push them away and take the other 2 grubs.
That's what we were missing from Barrel, you know, just the aggressive.
We knew it was on the way.
It was definitely coming, and hard for the Leona really to find an angle into the Talia specifically. Faker doing so much damage in that extended play. And unfortunately, KT just not really able to follow up with Barrel, follow up on Barrel, and kind of lacking the damage there as well to cut through some of the bulkier members of T1.
Yeah, Def wasn't there initially, but you're also looking at a Cole Sivir that was level 5. So that's not really going to give you the power that you desperately need. As Guma does have his flash, low on mana, doesn't have his satchel.
Yeah, he just used it for poke. Here comes Deft, trying to come in, gets the Q down. Guma will flash away, some mines on the ground, but 1 Q could do it, or just an auto, as Deft is just going to take him down, and Guma does get punished.
There's your lesson. Don't satchel unnecessarily. It's your escape tool, and Guma ends up burning flash and still going down there. And bear in mind, Summoners didn't have to get burnt from the other side. Now, this is that replay before the brushes. Well, the banana brush helping out there, and you see Barrel immediately tries to go for Faker. Faker gets a good flash before he's stunned, and then Barrel is just shredded.
It's your main source of damage is BDD, who's like on the other end of the river. You know, he can see you far in the distance. Very telling as there. Yeah, there you go. So he didn't have vision in the brush, and otherwise they'd be like maybe he's trying to knock Deft away so they don't have damage. But if you just knock yourself out and then flash, you're completely fine. So really big mistake there from Guma. Is going to get this Sivir back to that Essence Reaver rather in a much higher pace than otherwise would be the case. And I think Deft being online is really, really big for this KT comp. As we see, otherwise I think they might be in some damage struggles if BDD and Perfect are not in a great position.
Yeah, I think one of the things we kind of noticed with the Corki is that he has a decent amount, like, a lot of burst damage, you know, between like the Sheen procs and the Q ult later in the game, but it's not like a Tristana. When you have a Tristana in the late game, it will just constantly pump out damage at every situation. But I think sometimes teams have lent on the Corki as being like a DPS threat, and he really doesn't pump out the numbers as much as something like a Sivir or a Tristana, or even a lot of your traditional AD carries.
Oner taking the portal. Want to highlight. Perfect. In the carry versus carry matchup. Not necessarily one that I think you're supposed to win early. It really is much more about when you get to the later stage of the game, when the Counter-Strike cooldown becomes very, very low. But right now, really struggling with keeping up in terms of minions. Level down on Zeus as well.
Yeah, the trading patterns as well have been a bit questionable. I'd say he's being very aggressive, trying to push waves in and using his Counter-Strike, aggressively. And then Zeus just holds on to his hook shot until after that. And he's like, okay, well, you don't have Counter-Strike, so here I am, I'm in your face, I get an empowered Q. And the Camille is going to love that at this point in time, especially with the Sheen done. As Pyosik is here, and so is Beryl. So
that was really funny from Keria. He puts the portal down, then just starts recalling. So Perfect's like, okay, who's coming? No one. He's already gone. He's already back to base and running over. But it does kind of put some pressure on Pyosik and Beryl to be here to cover. Now, they will get spotted here, clearing our vision.
Yeah, they're the vision will come from it. So they just assume Zeus obviously went for the base there. Very interactive lane.
Yeah, Sivir Ziggs. Wow. What a riveting bot lane matchup where they're just left alone and it's just back and forth wave clearing. Now, do you have grubs in 30 seconds? So the team's trying to set up for that. Guma doesn't have TP, but does recall for his Ludens. And Zeus is going bot, also without TP. So if Perfect comes up towards the top side, Depp can stay for one more wave, reset, then TP top, and it could be 5v4 for KT.
Might try to set that up. I mean, they only got the one grub, so trying to get an extra 3 could be pretty huge to deny away from the Ziggs and just get it for your Sivir and your Jax as well in that Supreme late game. Definitely going to want that with some side lane threats. As here we go. Gonna try to come in here. The knockout comes in. There's that TP you guys are talking about. And now Faker in a really rough spot. He's gonna get Bard ulted, but there's really nobody to save him as Beryl takes a bit of damage, but will survive with the help of the Ivern. And this is the exact fight we were talking about for a minute.
I think it was the Blast Cone that ended up knocking him into multiple members of KT there.
We'll have to identify who hit it. That's always a fun bit in the replays like that. But yeah, and the bottle comes through, but it doesn't really help Faker's situation. And now Perfect doesn't even need a TP bot. Just walks down, not even a single plate lost to Zeus. So KT getting the better of that. They had kind of done the homework, done the setup, done the lane assignments, and get the kill and the grubs, and don't really lose anything for it.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if they really should have gone for that when Zeus doesn't have TP, and he's, pretty obviously looking to go bot and looking to put pressure on, but maybe just wanted to poke and it was a bit of a mistake. I really want to see the way that the fight kind of opened up, especially with that Blast Cone as well.
Yeah, that was the big thing, is just the TP advantage. As Zeus was matching depth, as you point out. Beryl, they will know this is really diveable. A lot of sums still available, but Leona has so much CC. Perfect has Counter-Strike as well.
Yeah, the dive a little bit unsure of themselves,
yeah,
so they're just back away.
Camille Sejuani into a Jax. This is what I kind of highlighted in the draft. It's so hard to really do anything if he just pops Counter-Strike at the right time. Now, though, we get the replay.
Watch the Blast Cone.
Yeah, eyes on it. So the root comes in. The engage starts here. Faker.
Oh, Guma!
Faker unraveled Earths backwards, and then Guma knocks Faker in. I would say that's some of the roughest anti-synergy we've seen probably since last game with the bottles.
I think it's.
I knew!
It's definitely
I knew
a mistake.
It was coming.
It's definitely a mistake. He's right-clicking to back, and they do not want to take a fight pretty obviously.
No.
I don't think they should have postured that far forward, but Oner is quite tanky, but...
No, Brandon, I think you're wrong. I think Guma hates Faker.
Confirmed.
That's what we saw there.
Yeah, we have the evidence now.
Slow-mo it. Do some investigation. We've got it. We've nailed it.
I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, KT, they got the 4 grubs. It's going to be very nice. I feel like that's the biggest thing. Like, you got the kill. That's kind of whatever. I mean, you're feeling good about that as KT, obviously, but getting the 4 grubs and having this threat of the Jax in the side lane potentially is going to be pretty huge.
We're also seeing the fact that Beryl is on Leona allows him to be peak Beryl, which is just going in on every single play. But the Ivern gives you so much additional leeway in how you play out those fights, right? You can engage a lot more aggressively, knowing that between the redemption as well as the Eclipse and Aftershock, you actually have a lot of power, as we do have Invade for the blue buff here.
And those two champs you're mentioning, Leona, Ivern, that was their first 2 picks, right? So they picked them together for this purpose of like, okay, we're going to set up Leona. Obviously, the Q lands, Leona goes in, then she can land her E onto other people. It's really nice synergy and very reliable and safe, even if you do pull a barrel, which he's barrel, so he will.
It does happen a lot.
Yeah. I think also, you know, the durability from Leona's W Aftershock really amplifying the shields from Ivern. You know, we see Leona being one of these supports who feels so tanky in the front line, but it's emphasized so much more.
Oh.
Kind of expected with those 2 early dragons being sort of lower value ones, that you get a high value soul, but it being Hextech as well, with so much ease to proc it for both sides, definitely going to be a priority going forwards in this game. And T1 feeling good about the fact that they've already secured 2.
That has been happening very consistently. I think all 3 games T1 have gotten the first 2 Drakes, right? And have threatened the Soul relatively early on. As we're looking for the Rift Heralds here, there is vision. Bunch of pings coming in. And especially with the Hex Gates, potential for KT to try to come over and contest it, but it doesn't look like they will.
I don't think they should. Right now, still have 2 unfinished Triforces on the team. I think so much of the power of both the Jax and the Corki is going to come from actually getting that. Herald is just going to get taken here. Not too surprising. Perfect, again, struggling, I think, pretty consistently in terms of CSing in this series, but Jax is one of those picks where as long as you don't counter-strike too aggressively, you are just able to, just by deterrent, stay in the side lane and match up relatively well. But Zeus is definitely benefiting from slowly building up this CS lead, having the item lead as well.
But you see moments like this where Perfect presumably recalling for the Triforce, which is obviously a big spike, but we get Zeus freezing the wave in return. So now, you know, Perfect perhaps go down and break the freeze, but he's missing out.
Looks like they knew he was in the brush as they had this ward here. This is going to force the flash out of BDD. Kind of awkward for him, as now there is definitely a lot of pressure with Sejuani, Camille, Talia, even a Bard setup, that they might be able to catch out BDD in a future play.
He wouldn't even step to the turret, so this should just go down. We see on the other side, KT trying to counteract that. I think Pyroshik maybe just down here to crash the wave, but they're going to go for the dive with the companion angle.
Yeah, this is, with Keria here, it's just not really going to happen, and KT will call that off as well.
Yeah, Bard and Ziggs both on the way. Both have really easy ways to also influence the dive from a good amount of distance. T1 not even using the Herald, right? Just getting a topside turret. I imagine just saving it for mid and then allowing the Ziggs to saturate down so that you get the additional map control.
I think particularly when one team has a Ziggs and the other has a Sivir, the challenge of taking mid-tier 1 is amplified so much that really the Herald, you want to be thrown down there. Otherwise, you're just not going to get a window to take the tower for such a long time. And both of those picks are just situated there, one-shotting waves against each other.
It's very fun. I'm a big fan of wave 15 personally in this matchup, where you clear the wave again for the 15th time in a row.
Oh,
very
right,
fun.
Yeah.
Very interactive.
Wave 17 is also pretty fun, but I like wave 15
So
personally.
I know this is a controversial question. What's your opinion on wave 19?
You know, I know it's
you
really
would bring
popular.
that up.
Yeah.
Well, it's a bit of a downtime.
A
Oh,
catch.
that's odd.
There's the Bard. There is the setup. And that's really what this Bard is for. It's going to get another flash in this one. And especially with Hextech Soul and the fact that T1 have the first 2 Drakes, every single Drake is super important, and already KT are down 2 flashes.
Yeah, especially the flash on BDD, definitely one they can look to punish. In an ideal circumstance for T1, they can get on top of this backline, have the follow-up from Guma, potentially Faker as well. So see if they can set up for those angles. Also, looking at the items, already 2 items on Guma with the Ludens and the Horizon Focus, a lot of burst there. But the thing is as well, you know, the setup for the team, you really need Zeus to be on a good angle here, because Keria, we've seen in the last one, the Bard ult into Ziggs ult doesn't work that well, especially into a Sivir who can just spell shield it, or a Corki who can dash away. You kind of need Zeus to be up there, so the spell shield can't just immediately come in to counteract.
See Keria just flying around the rift. They do have the 1 Cloud Drake, but also, well, he's Bard, so he is quite literally just hoverboarding around the rift, and he's able to stop the back of Deft. Kind of an awkward time. We still do have the Hextech Gates, so he will be here for any fight that does break out.
And now Navori done for Deft. That's a big Trident power spike. I think you're really looking for KT to get second item on Piochik, second item on BDD. The Manamune finish always is really big. And then Deft now has already hit his. From that point on, these fights are going to be feeling a lot better for KT. Oner, cheeky steal there, blue buff. Not going to be feeling too bad. And we do have a significant amount of vision control here in the KT jungle for T1, which is ideal because, again, I think you want to try and have Zeus come in from an angle and hook shot straight into the backline. Because if KT gets a kite back with Sivir and Ivern, you might be in some trouble.
Yeah, this ward on the blue buff, really big as a TP threat angle. And if Zeus can push his wave in, back away, then he can threaten that pretty easily. Do you see the control, though, in favor of T1? The Ziggs bomb's coming through, TP's going to come out with the Corki, and KT, I presume, are going to try and look to just push in and establish some control, but that sets up the bait with the TP. Zeus just recalling, the angle is there.
Yeah, and again, no flash for BDD, no flash for Piochik, so let's see how this one does break out. We have the Rift Heralds to be dropped in mid as Guma will sit here, try to clear the waves and pressure that one. Meanwhile, Faker's on the bottom side, has a nice angle for a wall if a fight does break out. Really trying to push in the Rift Heralds. Looks like it will get a charge, but they're not going to take that down just yet. They don't start the Drake at the same time as the charge, as Faker just going to say, well, they're all in mid, so I'm just going to take this bot turret.
Yep, good angle found there. Perfect moving over to cover, but a lot of poke coming down on a KT. They do have a redemption to kind of mitigate all the poke just before the fight. But you can see Deft about half HP already now.
Just waiting for the engage from the side of T1. There it is. They're going to throw it straight into Piochik. They know he doesn't have it, but he has actually a stopwatch, and he will be going down. That's a kill already on the Deft as Zeus just got in and murdered him, as that is 3 to the side of T1, and they will take it down.
Complete denial of the attempted front to back there from KT by T1. Coming in from multiple different angles, immediately getting on top of one of their most valuable members, Piochik, who doesn't have the flash from that earlier play. Turn that into a satchel mid, and now T1 starting up Nash, and I don't think there's anything that KT can do against this.
Tick all the boxes for what they need, and it was all about Zeus finding a good angle here. The ult comes into Piochik, but I think the timing, yep, completely off with the Ziggs ult.
Yeah, I was like, again, I got baited like Wolf and Atlas did in game number 2. I'm like, that's definitely a stopwatch, and then I'm like, wait, why does Ivern have a stopwatch? No. It didn't end up mattering, though. They did still kill him.
A big thing is the redemption didn't come down because Piochik was in stasis. Deft didn't get topped up. He was already half HP thanks to Guma's poke, so it was so easy for Zeus just to fly in there and finish him off, and that really was the sort of make or break for the fight.
In the previous one, it also allowed the rest of KT to kind of collapse. This time there was a Talia in place, and Zeus was on the back line, taking out Deft basically immediately, so didn't end up backfiring in the same way.
That felt like one of those fights where you really, what is going on here? Piochik's like, I'm going to take the blue buff. It looks like Zeus is going to just back away, and they will respect it. As the Corki was coming in, they didn't have full vision, but man, I thought he was in a lot of trouble.
Did he not get the blue buff?
He got the blue buff.
Mission successful. Didn't even ban flash for it.
It's telling, though, that like this Dragon is just going to go over to T1. They're going to get the inner. I don't think KT's going to be in a position to contest.
But KT got the objective bounty.
Yeah, that is very true, Veldas.
Yeah, it's really T1 getting the most value. They won that team fight. They knew they could go Baron immediately. Getting the value from the Baron, taking so much in terms of structures, and then moving over to secure the Dragon after. It is going to slow down the Soul, but it's allowed them to balloon this massive gold lead that really has put them ahead in this one. 6,000 right now between the two teams.
Yeah. Again, it really just comes down to the setup, you know, with the flashes burn, and then really just a perfect team fight around this Dragon area that nets them the Baron, actually, and now the Dragon, and now all the turrets. It really was kind of on a knife's edge in this one. T1 were ahead, and they were getting little advantages, but then really, that was kind of a back-breaking fight.
I'm not feeling good about the Corki loss streak getting broken in this one, gentlemen. Want to highlight as well, the very early death stance here from Zeus actually gets so much value, right? Between Grasp and just Resolve 3 in general, you're already going to be pretty beefy as the Camille. Sitting on the level lead, and then adding a death stance into a full AD team. A lot of value.
Keria doesn't have magical journey, actually. He's going to throw an ult in, and he gets a Valkyrie.
Yeah.
Not going to land this time.
Still not sold on the bard value this game. You know, it did bring some flashes, that was nice, but regardless, Keria managed to dip away from that one. Does have the Warmogs, but I'm not sure he has enough health. I don't think he has enough health yet that he actually gets the passive, but we'll just pick up some of those W's so he can get some health back, and the team are going to continue the pressure. 15 seconds on the Baron, so basically one wave to try and crash in and get this, and they'll use the wall to do so.
The ult's going to be thrown towards Leona. Beryl just says, okay, I'm going in, and he's dead. Now we're going to have people trying to get close, and that's the issue with the Sivir. He's able to stop some, but he has to get so close to the fire. And T1 so far ahead at this point, and now with both Deft and Beryl gone, looks like T1 are looking to take an even bigger chunk out of this Game 3.
Not a lot to be done here. Zeus just able to hook shot with impunity. I say that.
Got the ultimate. I mean, he's just going to use it here on the Jax. He's just frontlining. Even if he went down, this is a good trade. And he's still alive, still getting hook shots in, still getting stunts down. And T1 just biting off even more. Now, they're not going to get the inhibitor turret, which they probably should have gotten instead, but at least they got a couple of kills, I guess.
The thing is, they're so far ahead now. They're going to back off and spend. They'll be so much more powerful. You can see, look at Faker and Guma's inventory, both of them just a little bit of gold away from Rabadon's being completed. They're super far ahead. It's a Hextech Soul coming up, and it's going to be so hard for KD to fight back now. The ult misses on Beryl, but he kind of goes, well, if I'm in, I'm in. And the turnaround attempt on Oner doesn't really work. You can see Def tries to follow up and just gets deleted immediately.
It's very telling that Guma can satchel offensively and not get punished, right? Play so far forward. And here, Zeus does a good job of stalling. And we also see, again, like the physical damage shield that you get, plus the death dance. It's so hard to chew through this Camille, especially with the backup damage that is there from the rest of T1. And looks like T1 about to take a 2-1 lead here in this one, barring a crazy comeback from KT. But compared to the last game, where it was very obvious what that was going to be, right? Which is like a big impale on top of an ultimate from BDD and or the Rumble. I don't really feel like any of that is here. Like, particularly with these Ivancoms, once you really start falling behind, and you have Corki and Sivir, both of which have a really tough time getting damage off into, again, Ziggs, Camille, and Talia.
They can just steer target, kill a target. You know, Guma's level 16. If Zeus ults anyone on the side of KT and T1 follow up, they're just dead. And it's a minute 40 till Dragon. The pressure isn't on T1. They are trying to apply pressure to KT. But if they just wait for Hextech Soul, that is just, I mean, the game already feels very rough for KT, but Hextech Soul is just nail in the coffin.
Yeah, it's the final one. It's before they, you know, send it down.
Maybe some extra ones, like, you know, they already had it covered, and they're like, you know what, just for good measure, you know, in case.
Just in case, you never know, yeah. I mean, it's kind of incredible. You were talking about the items and the fact that they were going to go spend. Both of the AP carries on the side of 2-1 pick up their death caps, and Faker gets a little bonus rod. And he's like, all right, I'm just going full AP. I already have Void Staff. People are dying. And he's a real threat as well. Generally, it's, you know, just the Ziggs and you've got an 80 carry, but actually the amount of burst damage they have is just ridiculous.
There's also just no MR on the side of KT apart from like the Merc treads and the Corki.
Yeah, how could you forget the Merc tread?
Oh, have to mention it.
Little engage here from Beryl, but at the end of the day, he uses his satchel defensively, and Beryl's dead. And the timing this time with the Bard is fantastic, as Death will actually run away. Keria getting pretty close to the sun, and now it's Zeus who does take that magical journey in and is looking to end this game. I see one a little bit low on the health bars, but there's the knock up, the stun onto Perfect. He's got to flash away. Zeus is not going to let them get away at this point in time. Depth's desperate to try to do something, but he will be taken down, and so will BDD. So those two short-range carries will be taken out of the game, and T1 will look to end it.
And the imminent end, possibly to the last dance, can be felt as this third Nexus is gonna fall. T1 gonna go up to match point. Not a guaranteed win for them. I still think this game, despite the score early on, felt